Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Shimakaze, a ship which needs no introduction. It's been years since the release of Shimakaze, almost 10 years in fact, and yet it's still consistently the most popular ship in the entire game. Over the last few updates, it's just Shimakaze, the most played ship, outside of maybe some early access stuff here and there when new lines come out. Shimakaze's excellent though, and you can get it for free this update. The Expedition to the North Pole event has the Shimakaze available, so if you don't have it yet, this is a really solid ship to pick up if you're at all interested in torpedo boats. This is a very, very strong one. Of course, that event required you to get some tokens. Those are earned over the last couple of updates, and if you haven't, don't worry, there's still some solid tier 8s to get from this event for free. But if you manage to get there, Shimakaze is a good look. It's a very, very good option. Torpedo power is arguably the best in the entire game. I think the damage output is immense on this ship, as we're going to see in a little bit here. The problem with Shimakaze really comes down to the torpedo detection and a little bit on the range, I suppose. So there's a lot of 12-kilometer radars in this game, and that means 12-kilometer torps are a little bit harder to use in those games. However, most matches you will have opportunities to get within range and use these immensely powerful torpedoes. Shimakaze also has the best detection out of all the destroyers at tier 10, which means you dictate the engagement. You get to decide when to open up or when not to. I've played plenty of gunboat DDs, and let me tell you, when I'm playing a Mogador and there's a Shimakaze just reversing towards me, and I can never ever spot him, I try to charge in, he pushes away just enough to never get detected. It's very annoying. It's a very good tactic to use, pushing away those gunboat DDs purely on spotting alone. You'll notice my team is not the most aggressive in this one, but still managing to push that Mogador back. The torpedo spread here, I'm trying to layer them one on top of each other, trying to halfway overlay each of these 3 torpedo spreads. That way, we're hopefully covering up some of the gaps in the torpedoes. We get one hit on the Hindenburg, and oh my, that is a full health Azumo that is now dead. That's why we play this boat. One torpedo salvo, and that's 85,000 damage. Crazy, crazy torpedo power. There are some other ships that do have some better torps in my opinion. I really value the deep water torpedoes on the Yu Yang, for example. That one has a reload booster for those torps as well, so it can launch some pretty powerful spreads too, and they don't get spotted nearly as often. You'll notice in some of the clips here that when torping bow on targets, people can dodge these torps relatively easily. Even without a hydro, they're spotted from so far away. We're not even using the 20-kilometer torpedoes, and I would highly recommend you do not use the 20-kilometer torpedoes for that reason. They're spotted from even further away. It's like 2.5-kilometer detect, and that gives people a lot of time to get out of the way. So even though they have high damage, you're not hitting them nearly as often. That would be the one complaint here, I suppose. The gunpowder is excellent too. I'm not sure why I had AP there loaded for that initial salvo on Mogador, but don't be afraid to use your guns as a Shimakaze. Farming from smoke, you can do a little bit, but I typically am saving these smokes as my lifeline for situations where I don't want to be spotted, but I'm forced to be spotted anyway. Maybe a destroyer surprises me, or maybe I push to try and get a cap, and there just happens to be a battleship within my detection range. That's maybe not the best way to play it, but in this case, we will get away from this Missouri before he fires again, so I don't need to use my smoke. He did use his radar earlier, by the way. That's the only reason I pushed in. You got to be very careful around radar ships. It's very easy to get overconfident in a Shimakaze where you have such amazing detect and forget that the radar can just spot you regardless of your amazing detection. So we got to be a little bit careful. 93,000 damage in this one and 53,000 spotting as well. Unfortunately, our team is going to go down on this one, but I have an excellent game that goes right down to the wire. I gotta say, destroyers are some of the best carry ships in the game. They have so much power to influence the battle. Through spotting, of course, but scouting and contesting areas of the map, especially when you out-detect everyone else, is so strong. Letting your teammates know there's no one sneaking up on a flank for them is very, very powerful. Here we're going to run into a Daring, potentially one of the scariest destroyers, at least tech tree DDs, to deal with. Insane gunpowder there, and a heal, so we're going to smoke right away. Our teammates, though, are spotting since this Daring shot. And look at that gun damage out of Shima. I'm running a Torp build here. This isn't buffing the guns in any way. The alpha damage is just that crazy on this ship. 10,000 damage, just like that. Sure, we do get very lucky that our teammates are able to spot for us, but that is a tactic you can use, where if you smoke up after baiting the enemy destroyer into shooting you, then you go undetected and potentially they stay spotted because your teammates are spotting for you. Very good tactic to use, and in this case does net us a very, very nice trade on that Daring. Daring has a heal though, so we still don't want to get into a 1v1 gunfight with him, so we're going to back off just a little bit. I want to do some more spotting of the enemy battleships and cruisers here that are pushing towards this cap. I want my teammates to know what's coming for them, as well as maybe get some torpedo salvos off on them. We got to play it a little bit patient here. Also, a carrier in this game. I want to talk a little bit about how to deal with that, and it really comes down to not wasting your smokes and playing near teammates. That's going to be the key. Another quick dev strike there on poor Mecklenburg. When they don't have hydros, man, caught in a turn like that, it is devastating torpedo power. It's really, really nice to have. It's a different playstyle than the gunboat DDs, certainly a little more chill. And in matches like this, where people are pushing into you, you are immensely powerful. It is crazy what this ship can accomplish. I find myself getting locked out of some of these games, though, too, when there's carriers and they don't push in. I had a lot of those while trying to get footage for the Shimakaze video here, where people didn't just push into us and eat torpedoes. I'm showing you some of the good results because I do want to show Shimakaze in a positive light, as it is a strong and fun destroyer. But just know, some of the matchmaker these days can be quite passive. Imagine last game I was on the enemy team, and I was facing my team that was sitting all behind where they spawned. It's tough to deal with as a Shimakaze. But how to deal with the carrier? Well, you got to save your smokes for these scenarios, right? We got to be very, very careful about when we get spotted, how we're getting spotted, and if we use our smoke like this, which is fine, by the way, that's what they're used for, often, is to keep you alive in a Shimakaze. Yes, the guns are decent, surprisingly so, but most of our damage is still coming out of our torpedoes and our ability to spot and contest caps. That's really our battle impact for us. So now that I've used my smoke, I need to get back closer to my teammates for the next time the carrier comes by, since I won't have my smoke available. That's kind of the strategy there. If you have a smoke available and there's no radar ships around, you can play a little bit more on your own on a flank, trying to play a little more aggressive, try and find that flanking torpedo salvo, and use your smoke when the carrier comes to try and detect you. But as soon as you do that, you need to start considering getting back to your teammates. Their AA is your lifeline. That's what's going to keep the carrier from just hovering its planes over top of you and infinitely spotting you, while their teammates are probably going to shoot at you. Everybody loves to kill the Shimakaze because they know how devastating the torpedoes are. Here, spreading out the torps a little bit, but trying to overlap them. That's the key here. Trying to halfway overlap them. You'll notice that as I'm launching all these torpedoes in an effort to even hit bow on targets. So we do land one on the Jean Bart here. Very fortunate. Notice the Brandenburg, we did miss bow on like that earlier. It's a bit of a trade-off there. Certainly we want those broadside salvos of torpedoes. Doesn't always happen. Notice our smoke just came back up off of cooldown, so now I'm pushing a little further away from our Azuma, which is really my only support here for AA. Suppose the Catalunya is close-ish if I go back towards the BCAP, Brisbane as well, but I can play a little bit more aggressive now. There's a Daring around, gets spotted by our carrier. I have that smoke, and I want to take a bit of a fight here. I want to take a little more HP off of that Daring. I'm already in a kiting position. His shell arcs are a little bit slow. And notice I don't smoke right away. I am banking on the Jean Bart dying here. And that's the only thing that's spotting me. So I should, once I land the torp, go dark. I don't need to waste that smoke here. Unfortunately, the carrier knows where I am now, so I'm going to have to smoke anyway. But there's a bit of strategy there to show you. Unfortunately, the carrier does force us to use our last smoke regardless. I do not want to take more damage to that daring. Of course, we got to play very careful. It's a lot of hit and run. I'm sure my playstyle here was very annoying to that daring player. That's your goal, essentially, when you're playing a torpedo boat. Make those gunboat DDs very annoyed at you that they can't kill you, and that you're spotting them, maybe getting a little chip damage here and there, because late game, when we have a massive health advantage, that can translate into a more even trade. Daring is still an immense threat to me. Even on this HP, his DPM is just so high that we still are going to be running a little bit. I do want to also help on the B cap here. That's kind of the key for Shimakaze too. Trying to help your teammate, not only with spotting, but just controlling the cap zones. You'll be surprised how many games you win just based on having caps, having more points. Notice we have quite a bit more points than the enemy team, even though they are ahead on ships in this case. I guess I should probably talk about a little bit more on the actual specs of the Shimakaze. I haven't really done a great job of that, have I? It's a good ship, though. It really is. I kind of get caught up in the strategy on this one because it is so interesting to play a ship with such good concealment and torpedoes, but lacking in the gun power. You're much more reliant on your positioning and how you're spotting where you're torping from than just outright smoke up DPM ships or open water DPM gunboat ships. As for the torpedo DPM, you are second to the Kleber. Kleber actually has a little bit better, but still very, very powerful torpedoes here, I gotta say. They're very, very nice. Brandenburg eats 2 and will go down as well, so keeping our team in this one. Another torpedo salvo here on the Seattle. I think this time he had hydro. So this isn't the torpedoes getting spotted because they have bad detection. It's just hydro. So in that case, deep waters wouldn't really be helping us all that much. And I guess that's really about it. Our speed is very good, I gotta say. Not only do we have very, very good concealment, but our speed is up there. Not the highest at the tier, but 39 knots base speed is very, very nice. I don't actually take Swift in Silence. We'll talk about the build. I am a little more greedy to buff the damage output of our torpedoes, especially. A little bit of survivability buffs as well. So those 4 points into Swift and Silence, I personally don't take, but would be very useful in some of these games, especially this one where you're trying to get those alternate torpedo angles, trying to reposition to surprise people from a different angle. So Swift and Silence could be a good pick. That gives you more speed while you're undetected, but it does reduce your main gun's reload, which is probably fine on a Shima. But there are a lot of times where I see a Shimakaze who appears to not have installed guns on their ship. They just refuse to fire. And I still think there's a lot of value to be had in shooting your main guns as a Shimakaze. Here I'm just simply not patient enough. Seattle kind of jukes me. I thought he was going to kite instead of turn in here. And we just miss all of our torpedoes. Patience is required for this ship. Perhaps that's some of my frustration with it too, is that I don't have enough patience in this game sometimes. Getting a little greedy for some AP salvos here and hoping to not take damage. We do accelerate in time. Our acceleration is pretty good. You'll notice I'm through all of my consumables though, so no smokes, no speed boost left. It's a little dangerous to be doing that, but with our HP pool, 23,000 HP now with that new special HP flag, and we're taking the improved commander survivability expert. I'll show you that on the build, but more HP, more better on a destroyer, of course. We're quite maneuverable. I still think you don't want to be sitting in smokes for an extremely long time. Shimakaze is a small, nimble ship, but it's rather long. It's narrow, but it's a longer ship to fit all of these torpedoes. So you can eat some torps if you're caught broadside, especially when you yourself are torping. Down to the wire here on this game, last 2 minutes of the match, and it's still quite close. The enemy team is quite low on points compared to us, though, so we should still win on points. And I have a free line into the Yorktown. Yes, we're going to try and take them out, hopefully with torpedoes. Again, stacking those torps on top of each other, not perfectly on top of each other, but kind of halfway each one, so that hopefully there's no gaps in the torpedoes that a carrier might slip through. Yes, RNG, still the bane of my existence in a destroyer of all things. Look at that gap. Look at that gap for me, man. Come on. That's so sad. Yes, you have to worry about that as a torpedo boat. There is not any sort of fixed distance between your torpedoes. The ones on the edge will go towards the edge of your torpedo spread, but anything in the middle, it seems like they can just randomly be closer or farther apart from each other. It's very, very annoying. And in this case, hopefully our guns will be enough to take them out. Again, we got a lot of HP left over, so it should be fine. 40 seconds left on this game, down to the wire. Destroyers are very powerful in these situations, as we can see. We contested, or at least delayed them capping A, delayed them on B a little bit as well. And my teammates held on to the C cap for the entire match. So that was able to get us enough points to withstand their push at the end here, and actually even get a ship advantage here towards the end. So 130k in this one. Not as much spotting because, of course, carriers will be doing most of the spotting in this game, but still a decent amount. Nearly a Kraken, still got a Dev Strike in this one. Shimakaze is excellent and a very, very good pickup for this gift event, I gotta say. If you're interested in torp boats. If you're not, there's plenty of good other options too. So when it comes to the build on the Shimakaze, I did nerf it down just a little bit. The games you saw did not include the legendary upgrade for this ship, which I would highly recommend if you're getting it. But I assumed that if you're getting this ship in this event, you probably don't have the legendary upgrade for it. You can see it still performs very, very well. The thing about the legendary upgrade is it just gives you way more torpedo power. It's very, very nice to have. It's a little cumbersome with the turret traverse, but notice our 15% reload time here on that slot, so 117-second torpedo reload time. And if we look at this one, 25%. It's very nice. It is really, really nice to run. Anytime I'm playing Shima, I am running it. Down to 103 seconds from 117. It's really, really good. But you don't need it to have good games still. But I would recommend, if you enjoy Shimakaze, if you've got to this ship in this gift event and you find yourself enjoying it, or you just play a lot of Shimakaze, try to grind for that torpedo reload legendary upgrade. It's very, very, very powerful. As for those torpedoes, yeah, I really can't recommend you run the 20s. Look at that, 2.5 kilometer detection, and they're slower. Sure, you get some nice range so that you're not locked out in some of those carrier and lots of radar games, but man, they just are so awkward to use. They don't hit very often because people are just able to dodge them very freely. The 12s have much higher speed as well as better detection, and the 8s are even faster with similar detection. It's just that 8 kilometers is very hard to use in tier 10 these days. The reload's even quicker though, which is very fun. They're fun torps to use, but hard. I think this is Shimakaze on a little bit more difficult mode. I think the 12s are a nice balance for me. The other upgrades are pretty basic. You notice still taking torp tubes. Yes, I want to use the guns sometimes, but we still are mainly focused on those torpedo tubes. And combining this new flag instead of detonations, thank you Wargaming for removing detonations. Very, very welcome change. You don't need to run a det flag on your Shima now to not have to deal with that awful mechanic. But now this is still a very good flag, getting us up to 23,000 HP. 21,900 up to 23,000. It's a small change, but it does add to your survivability. It's very nice. This is also a special commander using Survivability Expert, so a little bit extra HP there as well. I know I said I wasn't using the legendary upgrade, but I was using this commander build to get me a little more HP. So that is something that will be a benefit here that you may not have. It's not too big though on the Survivability Expert, it's just a minor buff. Last stand, Preventive Maintenance, Survivability Expert, Concealment. First 10 points, always on DD, pretty much always on DDs. There's some gunboats where you wouldn't, but certainly on the Shimakaze, this is your first 10 points, and then probably fill the tubes or Adrenaline Rush for your next 3 points. And the other one, whatever you decide not to get. for the other 3 points. So 16 pointer would have these two plus the 4 on the side here. And then you can go with whatever you want to. A little more speed on the torps is nice. I like buffing the guns just a little bit. That alpha damage on those HE shells is immense, and you can rack up quite a bit of damage. People will be surprised by how hard the Shima hits with its main guns. Overall, I'm not much of a torp boat player, I will say. This is not my preferred playstyle for gunboats. I prefer gunboats personally. When I'm playing a destroyer, I find myself able to impact the game a little bit more. I like the more aggressive playstyle, the knife fights, the DDs at close range, lots of firepower at one another. I find that very enjoyable. So I kind of miss that when I'm playing Shimakaze. The devastating torpedo power, though, is quite fun, though, too. So a very good choice. And that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.